The anniversary weekend was already paid for when Brooks told me he was taking Darcy on a Lake Minnetonka cruise instead. I stood at our kitchen island with the North Shore confirmation beside my coffee, the dinner reservation underneath it, and the wool sweater folded in its bag. He wore the navy jacket I had pressed, checked his phone before looking at me, and dropped the sentence like he was changing a tea time. I can't make the trip. Jenna, Darcy needs me at a VIP cruise. And the way he said needs made my stomach go still. For a second, I looked at the papers because paper does not soften a lie to spare your feelings. The dates matched. The deposit was gone. My time off approved. And Brooks had known that before he opened his mouth. I asked, "Our anniversary weekend," and he rubbed his thumb across his phone like the answer was inconvenient rather than shameful. "It's work. You know, I have to protect the club's image." And I understood he had rehearsed the version where I looked selfish for noticing. I did not yell, because yelling would have helped him make the room about my reaction instead of his choice. I watched him glance down when the screen lit again, and Darcy's name appeared with a message long enough for the first line. "I saved the corner suite. Don't make me explain you again." Brooks turned the phone over too quickly, but not quickly enough to put my heart back. That was when the cruise stopped being work and became a receipt I could not unsee. His face changed when he saw mine, annoyed that the clean story had picked up dirt before he could hand it to me. "Jenna, don't start," he murmured, and those 3 words told me how long he had trusted my silence to do his cleaning. I looked at the sweater, the reservations, the phone between us, and for the first time, I did not reach for that understanding again. Before Brooks could cancel our anniversary without blinking, he had spent years becoming the man everyone believed because I kept sanding the rough edges off his life. I corrected membership emails after midnight, rebuilt seating charts while dinner went cold, reminded him to call Martin, and turned forgotten details into something deliberate. At the club, people praised his calm, and Brooks would rest his hand at my back like we knew the secret. At home, when I wanted one weekend that belonged to us, he treated disappointment like poor timing. Darcy Wells came in through work first, which made the whole thing easier for him to dress up. She handled VIP guests for the lake cruise company. All polished hair, warm eye contact, and a smooth way of making men feel chosen. Brooks called her sharp, connected, useful, and I believed him because none of those words sounded dangerous until after dinner. Her name kept appearing in guest lists, tasting notes, and late messages. And when I asked why she needed him at 10 p.m., he barely looked up and muttered, "Jenna, you are making my job personal." That sentence landed hard because my life had been personal whenever it helped his job. I had stood beside him at club dinners, smiled through introductions, and edited notes so Martin saw polish instead of panic. The proof was not hidden in some locked drawer. It was sitting in regular places, ordinary enough to be insulting. Darcy's email thanking him for showing up, the event photo where his hand rested near her waist, and the corner suite he forgot to explain before his phone did it. After Brooks went upstairs, I opened the Seattle email I had ignored for 3 weeks. A regional performing arts tour needed someone who could manage venues, contracts, crews, and chaos without turning every emergency into sacrifice. I almost deleted it because moving would complicate my marriage, and that embarrassed me more than the offer scared me. Brooks came back for water, saw the message open, and tightened before asking, "I thought you passed on that," while I closed the laptop and understood the question had changed. I did not look for a fight after that. A fight would have given Brooks a clean little story about a jealous wife who overreacted to a work trip. I went to the den, opened my personal laptop, and pulled up the folders I had built over years of helping him look competent. There were membership email templates, event checklists, private vendor numbers, insurance renewal reminders, seating notes, and the kind of small instructions nobody appreciates until they are gone. None of it belonged to the club. and none of it had been stolen from Brooks. It was my memory, my labor. My evenings turned into systems because he always came home with one more thing that needed fixing. I copied the materials that were mine, cleaned anything with club-specific details, and made a plain transition document that told him where to ask the right people inside his own office. Then I changed access on my personal folders, not to punish him, but because a wife is not a backdoor into free operations support. The next morning, Brooks found the printed packet on the kitchen counter beside his travel mug. His face tightened before he touched it, like paper had started accusing him before I did. "What is this, Jenna?" And I kept rinsing my coffee spoon because my hands were steadier when they had something ordinary to do. "It's what I have been handling for you. And from now on, anything related to the club needs to go through the club." He stared at me as if I had moved a wall in the house. "You're really doing this over Darcy," he muttered. And I looked at the packet between us, because the answer was already sitting there. "This is over years of you calling my work help and your choices responsibility." He opened the first page, saw Martin's name under internal contacts, saw the renewal checklist, saw every reminder he had mistaken for instinct. By noon, Martin called him about a member confirmation that had gone out with the wrong room listed, and Brooks texted me 3 words, "Where is the template?" I read it once, locked my phone, and let his office answer him. The cruise left under clean evening light, the kind that makes every bad decision look almost respectable from far away. Brooks had told himself he was there for the club, and Darcy had dressed the night like proof that he belonged beside her. She moved through the boarding line with a guest list in one hand and her phone in the other, smiling at people who liked being recognized before they had to introduce themselves. Brooks followed close enough to look attached, but not close enough to admit what they were. Laurel Finch noticed the problem before anyone made a scene. She was Darcy's scheduling lead, the woman who knew which clients needed gluten-free plates, which ones wanted privacy, and which names were never supposed to be mixed with house favors. The reservation said hospitality review, but the notes requested a corner suite, a private dinner setting, and a route that avoided the main deck after dessert. Laurel kept her voice low when she reached Darcy near the service counter, asking, "Is Brooks here as a club contact or your personal guest? Because the paperwork is saying both." Darcy's smile tightened, and Brooks stepped in before she could answer, because stepping in had always worked when nobody checked the paper. "It's not that complicated," he said, and Laurel looked at the printed itinerary instead of his face. "It becomes complicated when a partner venue, a private suite, and a VIP courtesy all sit under different explanations." Darcy murmured, "Laurel, don't turn this into something ugly," but the ugly part was already there, typed neatly under special requests. I was not on that boat, but my phone still carried the night to me in pieces. Brooks texted while I sat beside my open Seattle interview notes. "Darcy needs me tonight. Don't make this harder." And I stared at the words until they stopped hurting and started explaining him. "You're right," I typed. "I made my decision too." He read it on the deck. And within minutes, Martin Greeley sent his own message asking why the club's name appeared on a personal cruise booking. Brooks came home before noon the next day, carrying the careful face of a man who had expected embarrassment to stay private. It had not. Martin Greeley had already called a review meeting, and the word review sounded gentle only if you ignored the emails underneath it. The club's name appeared on a personal cruise booking. Darcy's notes showed a private suite tied to VIP courtesy, and Brooks had no clean way to explain why work kept looking like cover. Nobody screamed at him, which made it worse. Martin did not accuse him of ruining anything. He simply pulled Brooks off 2 member dinners and told him trust gets protected before it gets repaired. At Darcy's company, Laurel's report moved through quiet channels, and Darcy was taken off the premium guest list until management understood what had been promised and to whom. Their lives did not explode in public, But the rooms that used to open easily began closing with polite smiles. I learned most of it from what Brooks did not say. He came into the kitchen that evening, loosened his tie, and looked at me like he wanted anger, because anger would let him defend himself. "You're taking this too far." Jenna landed on the counter between us, weak beside the evidence already there. I turned my laptop enough for him to see Darcy's sweet message, Martin's email, and the old reminders I had sent when his deadline slipped. "This far," I told him, "is where your choices finally reached without me carrying them back." After he went silent, I closed the laptop and signed the Seattle offer. The relief was not loud. It came like a clean breath after years of keeping every room comfortable for someone else. Brooks sat at the dining table later with my transition packet open, tracing lines he used to call little favors. The membership template, the renewal checklist, the vendor notes, the names I had remembered so he could look prepared. All of it stared back at him in plain English. Taryn Locke found me after closing, when the lobby smelled like old velvet, floor cleaner, and coffee brewed too late on show nights. She had managed that theater through snowstorms, late donors, broken scanners, and guests who thought patience came free with their ticket. One look at my face told her enough, but she waited until I set my bag down before saying, "You finally stopped answering him." I almost smiled because she had watched calls pull me out of dinners and quiet rides home. We sat in the back row with the house lights half down, and Taryn did not give me the easy speech. She named things. The night Brooks called about a missing seating chart while I was helping calm subscribers. The Sunday I rewrote his member apology while he stayed out with Darcy after a cruise tasting. The fundraiser where he took the compliment, and I held the schedule from my phone. Every example had a receipt in my memory, which made her voice harder to dismiss. "Jenna," she murmured. "Calm is not the same as consent." My phone buzzed before I could answer, and Brooks's name came up like a habit trying to survive being broken. Martin had pulled him from 2-member dinners while the club reviewed how his personal decisions had touched partner reservations, and the panic in his message was quieter than anger. I stepped into the aisle and called back because avoidance was not the same as strength. Brooks sounded smaller when he admitted Martin wanted everything routed through staff now, then added, "Darcy says she didn't know about North Shore." That almost hurt more than the lie. A few minutes later, Darcy's message arrived, incomplete, saying Brooks told her our marriage had been over in every way that mattered. I read it twice, then answered only what the evidence allowed. "You saw the ring, late messages, and the sweet request with his name beside yours." Not asking harder questions was a choice. When I looked back at Taryn, she did not cheer. And I was grateful, because this was not victory. It was responsibility finally landing where it belonged. Seattle did not feel like a fresh start at first. It felt like rain on boxes, sore shoulders, and a rental apartment where every sound reminded me I was living without anyone's habits but mine. The performing arts tour office sat above a rehearsal hall, and by my second week, people were asking for my judgment instead of borrowing my patience. Contracts had names. Crews had schedules. Emergencies had owners. And for once, none of it came home disguised as a wife's duty. Still, healing was not a straight line. Some nights I missed the old kitchen so sharply that I would reach for my phone before remembering why silence had become safer than hope. I missed the version of Brooks who laughed while brushing snow from my coat. Not the man who let Darcy's messages sit between us like proof I should keep shrinking. Taryn called whenever she knew a hard day was coming, and when I admitted I almost checked on him. She let the quiet stretch before murmuring, "You can care without returning to the job." Back in Minneapolis, Brooks learned what structure cost when nobody loved him enough to do it unpaid. He hired an actual administrative coordinator, went through club training, and told Martin that the systems he had claimed as his own were mostly mine. Darcy stayed employed, but Laurel's report moved her away from VIP guests until trust could be rebuilt in ordinary rooms with ordinary rules. Nobody disappeared. Nobody was destroyed. But every person touched the consequence that matched the choice they had made. One evening, after a sold-out performance, I walked home under wet streetlights with a staff badge in my pocket and applause still humming somewhere behind me. Brooks had texted earlier, and the words waited on my screen until I finally opened them. I used your kindness like it would never run out. I cried for a minute because the sentence was true, then wiped my face in the elevator mirror and did not answer right away, because my piece no longer needed to move at his speed anymore. I returned to Minneapolis to finish the house paperwork on a gray morning that smelled like wet leaves. Brooks was already in the kitchen, 2 coffees cooling on the counter, and the signed documents stacked between us. That room had heard the first lie about the cruise, and now it held the ending without raising its voice. He looked thinner, not ruined, just worn down by consequences. No apology could rush. We signed what needed signing, passed keys across the counter, and let the quiet sit there like a third person. Brooks kept his eyes on the papers before whispering, "I thought you would always be here because you never made it loud when I hurt you." I touched the folder and felt no need to punish him with a sharper sentence. My silence was not agreement. "Brooks, it just took me too long to choose myself. Darcy's part had already closed without me watching. She kept her job, but Laurel's report moved her out of VIP service, back into regular bookings where charm could not replace trust. Martin kept Brooks at the club, but the promotion people assumed was his never came, because reputations break quietly and repair quieter. Taryn carried the last box to my car and squeezed my shoulder without turning the moment into advice. At the door, Brooks asked if there was any chance we could become us again someday. I looked at the kitchen, the coffee, the empty place where my North Shore folder had once sat, and I did not feel hatred anymore. "Maybe we become better people," I answered, "but not together." Then I drove back to Seattle, and after a sold-out show, I walked home knowing peace had not arrived loudly, but it had stayed. Some endings do not arrive as applause. They come when your apartment feels quiet, your name feels whole, and your heart stops waiting for someone to notice what you carried. If this life has ever looked like yours, I hope you choose peace before you forget how it feels.